a lot of people make this same mistake. Nothing's wrong with it, it just doesn't stand out. Without that, we're just stating a problem, but I don't know who this is a problem for. Those key details about why you're doing that need to be called out. Here's how hockey actually makes me a better designer and a design manager.
John, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, overall, I think that the introduction, this is something that I identify with a lot of my mentees through ADP lists or through LinkedIn, is that it's a pretty general statement about design, and I think a lot of people make this same mistake, which is I'm a thoughtful problem solver who creates meaningful connection or meaningful experiences that make a human connection. I hope so. That's pretty table stakes, but it really doesn't tell me anything about their unique talents or skills and how they apply that to design, or how that makes them a better problem solver, or how that helps them work well with teams. So right off the bat, I think that it's just nothing's wrong with it. It just doesn't stand out. So when people ask me, how do I stand out? That's a huge one.
So what would you recommend instead?
Yeah. So I think really taking a look at your skills and strengths, what part of the process that maybe facilitates the best, and how do you call out your unique attributes that you do better, or you can contribute more to a team than say somebody else, or your unique perspective or insights, some life experience that helps you see design through a different lens. I think just something a little bit more stand out from the typical table stakes of what a design process is.
Yeah, I think she did a good job though on the word collaborator. I think that's kind of it's something we don't see that often, and it's kind of and we see that she's a UX designer, researcher, and collaborator. The first two being more domain of expertise, and then the last one being more team oriented and collaborating. It feels like collaborating with teammates, with users, being almost collaborating, facilitating. All these words come to mind, and it's kind of a cool word to have there. So I thought that word was great, but then I agree, John, with you that the sentence below is a bit too generic and lacks some sort of a uniqueness, and it doesn't come off. It comes off a little vanilla, right? So yeah, definitely I would have also like to see potentially her face. I think she did a good job with the image, and how the color that she chooses for the CTA is green. It kind of matches, and that's a cool thing that keeps that brand going, right? Subtly. But yeah, maybe seeing her face there would also be nice, yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that. I do like the trees.
Yeah.
I feel like it gives a perspective of something that she probably cares about, like the outdoors, which I like. There's some personality there. I completely agree with everything you both have said. Definitely vanilla, I'm a thoughtful problem solver, that sentence. The other thing I'd say is it's not very focused. When you have UX designer and researcher, it's what role are you aiming for?
What?
Are you aiming to be a UX designer, or are you aiming to be a researcher?
Yeah.
A collaborator, I think, is a good ad, like you talked about, Ludovic. It's something that's saying you are into helping and working with other people, and at the same time, choose one. I would choose either UX designer or researcher. Pick a lane, and it's because it's hard to land one of the. It's hard to convince. If you say that you're good at both, it's gonna be hard to convince someone to land.
And that's a good point. That's a good point. Actually, I want to jump on this one. Yeah, you're right that it's true that up there should say just UX designer and collaborator, and then in the sentence below, if research is a specialty of hers in the UX design process, then she could clarify there and say, I'm a UX designer with a strong specialty in research, blah 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 blah, and then that clarifies everything for us. Yeah, good point.
Yep. Moving on down, what are your thoughts, John, on the different case studies shown, at least from the surface level?
Yeah, so I thought that they had a pretty good variety of projects, from something that was what I expected to be an entire app, entire user flows end to end, versus a smaller capability within Figma. So thinking about the ability to solve completely new design challenges end to end, versus plug into a system that already works, and how do you have to work within systems and rules. So I thought that was a nice bit of variety. I like the mental health approach or the mental health problem, because probably what I'm going to see there is some kind of thought process or approach to the emotional needs of users, and that doesn't always come across in super functional type jobs to be done or apps that you're solving for. So overall, I think that, and then seeing e-commerce, like I'm seeing a variety of different case studies that span industries. So someone's going to find something relevant. So as a hiring manager, I'm more likely to be able to like see the breadth of the abilities, know that you can problem solve through different spaces. So I thought that was super helpful to see.
And how do you feel about the ordering of what's there? Do you feel like things should be moved around, or are you happy? Like,
yeah, so
what is...
I think that's got to be tailored to the job you're specifically seeking at the moment. I tell people like, lead with your best project. Assume that hiring managers have time to look at your one and best project. But if that project has to be like tailored to a specific industry or a specific type of problem that you're solving, like let's say e-commerce, that's pretty specific, right? So if you're applying for an e-commerce job, you'll want to make sure that that's like the top of your portfolio and that's a solid case study. So, it might change depending on, their situation, but overall, I think the layout was good enough as long as I've made the assumption that the strongest projects are at the top, maybe oldest or weaker projects are at the bottom.
Fair. Ludovic, what are your thoughts?
Well, the number one thing that comes to mind is like, wow, there are a lot of them. And when I think of them, like I went to LinkedIn and I was thinking to myself, right, has she been in the industry for a while? I almost felt like she's been there for, like, I don't know, 5, 6, 7 years and had many, many projects going. And then when you realize that on the LinkedIn that it's not the case, then you're like, wow, like, are they going to be shallow without even going, like clicking on them or reading them and just like starting to wonder now? It's like, how much in depth are they going to go, right? So I'm almost like, I see a red flag here potentially. Maybe not. I hope she's going to prove me wrong, but that's something that crosses my mind. The second thing that crosses my mind is the fact that the H1s and paragraph text seem to not have a cohesive meaning, right? Meaning that sometimes the H1s say what the app is about, sometimes it's about a goal. And so I think that she would benefit a lot from saying, all my H1s are going to describe the overall goal I was trying to achieve. And then my paragraphs are going to talk about whatever, right? But here I'm getting a little bit of everything. And every single time that happens, I'm like, it crushes my expectation and I have to reorient a little bit. But other than that, the overall layout is clear. I think that I would have extracted also a bit more metadata. Maybe, like obviously we can see the desktop and mobile screens on the side, but say like, when was that? Like what date was it? Like, was it 2020? Was it 2023? Is it recent? Is it not, right? Just so that before clicking, I know how dated or not these case studies are. But yeah, other than that, I think she did a good job overall on the UI design of those screens from what I can see far away though. Yeah. If
we're being a little nitpicky, some of the things that I'll grill designers on my team for are like, let's look at the spacing, the spacing between the like H1 and like the support copy. It changes a little bit, and then the legibility and font of those changes too. So like the redesigning the bank app versus the other things. Sans serif versus serif font faces.
Yeah.
So like unifying that.
We're definitely being nitpicky.
Okay.
Yeah, 100% with you. Definitely being nitpicky, and we do so on purpose because, gosh, we've heard from people where one thing is what gets them out of the running for a job, and like the fact that there's no space here, then there's a lot of space here, then a different amount of space potentially here and here, and different fonts as you both were saying in terms of
the last one here,
like all of that adds up. All of that adds up, and so it's small. So anyway, we're over time, but what are your ratings? John, we'll start with you.
Okay, I'm gonna go with a good. There's some visual polish to be had and text consistency, but I feel like I've got a somewhat of an understanding of who this person is, some of the projects they've worked on. I've found the information that I needed to find, so can't fault it for that.
No, I think I have to agree with the good. I would never give it a man. I think it's way past that. I would say that it doesn't take much from what I see to actually go to a solid, or to be like like between good and solid. I think that if the hero section gets a bit more love, and if the project section also does, if I'm getting more metadata on each project, if you know the H1, the paragraphs are cleaned up in from a contextual standpoint, what they actually mean. And yeah, I don't think it would take much, and just half a day, this could go to a solid for sure. Yeah.
Love it. Okay, well, it is time for our first palette cleanser, gentlemen. So, John, there's a question for you. What advice would you give to someone on their portfolio if you did not want them to get a job?
Ooh, if I didn't want them to get a job, I would say don't explain the reasoning for why you've made any choices. Just no context. Just tell me what you did in order.
That's a bootcamp special, right?
Or out of order, right? Exactly.
Yeah. Well, cheers for the first palette cleanser, gentlemen. We're moving on to the next section, which is the About page.
Where is it, though? Where's the About page?
Ooh, it might not be there. Well, this might be pretty quick then. So that is a good... So, with that in mind... Oh, I forgot to get my rating, by the way. I would also give it a 3, for all the reasons you all did. But since we're moving on, though, on this, and there's no About page, that means there's an overhaul. I think we can skip, Carla, you need an About page, because that's where you can get across all of your personality, who you are, what you care about, your passion, even though we talked about not using the word passionate, you can still get across your passions. And just who you are as a person. It's one of the, I think it's a really important page.
Can I give an example?
And so,
okay.
Yeah, absolutely.
This is something that I've brought into more than a dozen hiring interviews for myself as I was interviewing around. I have a section on my portfolio. I'm passionate about hockey. There's the word that we all love, but I don't say that. What I say is, and how I bring it into my portfolio presentation and my portfolio site is, here's how hockey actually makes me a better designer and a design manager. So I relate something that's my interest with how that actually makes me a good candidate or someone who could fit in at the company. And that got me to final round interviews literally everywhere I interviewed, except for Figma. So there you go.
Oh, wow. Those picky bastards.
Wow, that's cool. I love to hear that stuff, because people forget
awesome.
that personality is so crucial, and they just show the work, and it's no, you need to show your personality, you need to show who you are, you need to show who you are outside of work. It matters. They forget
what makes you different.
So they cannot forget this. You have to have an About page to show your face, show who you are. People will empathize with you so much more. They will connect with you at a human level so much more. So definitely it's not going to take you much time, but you have to have one.
Well, we're all saying 1 star needs an overhaul. Also, John, coming back around to you, as hockey makes you a better design manager. It's probably because you're able to get out aggression, right, in a way that's healthy.
Well, it's actually
you've learned how.
It's
to get
actually
out
about the approach to the problem solving and treating every game like a problem to be solved. Doing research, arranging the team for at least design management, arranging the team to play people to their strengths, make sure that there's support. So yeah, there's a whole lot, but aggression, maybe sure. We'll put that in there too.
Yeah, sure. Yeah. Every time I think of hockey, I always think of Happy Gilmore.
364 more days till next year's hockey tryouts. I gotta toughen up. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
With Adam Sandler and bringing his ice skate around. Yep. Every time. Okay. Well, with that being the case, then we can just set the timer for 5 minutes, and we're going to review a case study. Being that it's the first one, I suspect we'll review the Dog app, but do you guys have a preference about a different one?
No, that would be where I'd go as a hiring manager.
Let's go for the first one, yeah,
so
for sure.
Okay, so then I'm going to press play, and let's get after it.
A few moments later.
Yeah, so do you want top to bottom, whole thing?
Whatever works for you.
Yeah, let's do it.
If you want to do bottom
All right,
to top.
yeah, so bottom to top. We're going top to bottom. Starting at the hierarchy and the layout of the type there, I think consistency throughout. Really coming up with sizes for really consistency across the titles or subheaders. Yeah, so like the mobile application versus like the description of what this was, and the description was actually the biggest thing on the link that you just clicked to get to this project even, so those have been flipped. But moving on down, I don't have a problem with people just giving like basic project facts. I think that's totally fine to give a bit of context, but scooting on past that, I thought that this part was a little interesting, and maybe it goes back to the personas thing, but instead of just stating a problem and a goal, I really would like to start framing it as like, what are the audience, like who is the audience? First of all, like who are the people who are going to be coming to this, and what are some of their like potential needs? We don't even need to be specific or combine into this perfect persona, right? It's just, what are the needs of people who have dogs, right? They're going to take them for walks. Well, what are some issues there? It's like, it's not everywhere can you bring a dog. Some places are leash, some places are off leash. So like, those are the kinds of things that you could be setting up to really describe the problem a little bit better in terms of like who's going to be using this, what are their specific needs? Because without that, we're just stating a problem, but I don't know who this is a problem for, or what it's trying to help them solve. So I think just the reframing of that, and we're going to see this as a consistent theme, which is like scannability. I've got 5 or 10 minutes to look at a case study at most, and if it's super long, I want to be able to understand each section, see some highlights pulled out in a way that like the hierarchy can help support. So like, for example, getting into research insights, like really in big pull quotes, and maybe we're talking about the cool Figma feature that released it, right? How do you make it stand out from the rest of the text? How do you really quickly let me know what are your common themes and pain points that you found? I want to know like top 3 or 4 across all these things that I can read in like a single sentence, or even a sentence that combines like, what we found was this and this and this, and it's that simple to talk about. And then something that I mentioned before was like what I wouldn't do, how would I not get hired, and it's like not to talk about why. So this was very much like here's the activities that I did, but there's so many different research methodologies, and there's so many different design exercises or like brainstorming exercises that you could run. So like from your research or what you found, why did you ask those questions? Why did you use this type of survey? What did it tell you? And then how did you use that to inform your next step? I think that would be a really great like piece of information that was missing for me. It was like, how did you use that to inform what you were going to do next in your process? Not just that you were following a checklist of like, I did this and this and this, but that you were thinking about why you're doing each of those things, and that it's facilitating some kind of information that you needed to move on to get clarity with your design decisions. So we can keep going down past research insights. I thought that, the persona, again, it looked like it was maybe based on about 17 different interviews, which is at least getting up there in numbers, not just like 2 or 3 people, but
no, it's surveys.
Okay. So yeah, again, like this is where like, I think switching back to just thinking about who is your potential audience, basic facts, like, is this for someone with dogs or not dogs, right? I think some basic facts that are clear and true you can start with to kind of avoid this problem of a fuzzy persona that's not really telling you anything, but taking your time to create. And then skipping down to the wireframes, again, I would have loved to see, like, okay, why did you, like, what made you feel confident to move on? And then what are you trying to solve here? Because we really quickly moved from medium fidelity wireframes to like branding and ideation, and then a prototype. But I wasn't exactly sure what was actually changing between all of those things, other than like the fidelity. Did any of the actual UX, the experience change, or was this just like a visual fidelity iteration or pass? And so I think that being more clear, and again, maybe it could be in there, but given like 5 minutes to read, those key details about why you're doing that need to be called out. Was there something that you like? Did you test a wireframe or paper prototype early and it wasn't good enough, or people didn't have enough detail, so you needed to bump it up in fidelity so that it could connect with the app that you're trying to get them to test? Like that would be a valid reason for like moving up in fidelity, but like just the understanding of how and why those things are happening, I think would be super helpful. Again, back to the usability testing's key findings. I thought this one like it makes sense. You've kind of got early research and then usability testing for the app, but pulling those things out and like really just very, very high level summary. Bullet points are great, but there's no use of hierarchy, so it's just scanning it. I've got to read it top to bottom because otherwise I'm going to miss one of the key pieces of information, but it probably could have been said in about half as many words. And then in the iteration section, I think this was iterations based on the usability testing, but it didn't really give context again for why, like what these are iterations of or why. I thought the format was a little hard to consume, just by being spaced out like this. That feels like a cover image if you want to show like a hero shot, like at the top or something. But I didn't think that it helped me really understand what the iteration actually was. I think a comparison or even side by side calling out what changed could be pretty helpful. And
also the spacing is just off.
The spacing is
like everything else
it's
like
right. We went to like an interesting 2x grid, but it's all like skewed to the left, just the way that it's arranged. So, and then it just jumped into kind of some screens about the final version and the quick through prototype. So, not too much to talk about there unless I go into the specifics. But given our time, I think that's like how I would assess the overall layout and content. And honestly, sometimes even an app that's in a rough state visually, if someone's thinking is good and they're telling me how they think as a product designer, that's almost more important because like the tangible hard skills, easy to work on and improve, right? Figuring out how to get better at like visual hierarchy and typefaces and color choices, pretty easy. But understanding how to break down a problem and think and your methodologies and when you use them or not, to me, that's critical. So that's why I focus on that.
Yeah, that's such a good call out, John. This is one thing that we focus on in our programs with all of our students is understanding the why behind your decisions. So you have a reason for doing it, and it's like a treasure map. Basically, you start with what information you currently know and what you need to find out, and then you go about finding out that next thing, and then you're going to inevitably have more questions, which is going to force you into the next decision, and then you keep doing that, and eventually you'll end up at a solution. But it's always basing your next decision on what you currently know and what you need to find out. And so, like, if you just keep doing that over and over, you'll get there. UX is like 100% at its core a critical thinking process.
100%.
Ludovic, what are your thoughts, my friend?
I don't know what I think. I think she did a pretty good job considering the fact that this is a bootcamp portfolio, and it looks like she has a ton of case studies that we've not looked at, and this is just one of them. Considering the sheer amount of case studies that she created, I'm kind of impressed with the structure and the visuals. It's like it comes off as it's someone who learned UX recently, yet that has some skills that can quickly ramp up. It's not like it's someone who's going to take forever to learn at the job. So at least that gives me a sense of overall quality that is higher than in most other bootcamp portfolios that I've seen. But having said that, though, there are a lot of pointers that make me feel like, yeah, for sure, there is some inherent quality in it that I can observe at a glance. Yet it's missing a lot of that, the glue between each section. Why did I go from there to there? It feels like the problem statement just below that, the section just below. The small little section is not really. It doesn't feel like it's a real problem that people will actually download an app for. If they wanted to go on a hike, would they think, they just wanted to look for dog-friendly app, would they really go on the App Store and struggle through millions of apps and try to find something for that specific problem? I don't know. I mean, I'm not entirely convinced. At least, I don't know, in Washington State, we have this data pretty easily. It's easily findable on the web. And I think the web would be just fine for a problem like this. And so it makes me feel like this problem was created out of almost like a gut feel rather than actual research. And so it's kind of creating that kind of shaky situation where I'm like, well, if the problem statement isn't 100% solid and I feel like it's more just a gut feel, then I'm like, even though everything else is quality, I'm like, I kind of doubt that it has a solid grounds, right? But then other than that, I mean, I would definitely remove the user persona because it's just from a few user surveys. I know some hiring managers want to see that, but I don't know if they know what they're talking about. If that's the case.
Keep it
Yeah.
keep it for the appendix. That's the way we see it. It's like you don't have to get rid of it entirely, just keep it for the
Yeah,
appendix.
keep it for the appendix. But yeah, you know, like when I'm looking at the medium fidelity wireframes, you know, they look fine. I mean, they're not black and white, first of all, but they look like, you know, they're done with care. And you know, I've seen so much worse on many portfolios out there. So yes, it's just a medium fidelity wireframe, but I see that Cara is you know, good at a craft, especially as a beginner, right? But I'm missing that glue between like how did you get there? Why did you need to get to that medium fidelity wireframe so fast? Just based on that initial problem that we don't even think is a problem, you know, according to a hiring manager, right? And so I have a lot of question mark as to how she bounced from one section to another, and I wish we had more of the why behind each decision, rather than just, you know, a few sections explaining the what. You know, it's fine to have the what, but I would intersect way more why everywhere. But yeah, so that's why I feel a bit conflicted. I think she has tremendous amount of potential, and I can totally see it. And I don't think she's there to blame at all, because, you know, like a lot of bootcamps just teach the UX process in such a templated way, and this is exactly what students come out with, right? And is it her fault? Absolutely not. Would she be able, you know, to ramp up very quick in a team? I think so. Based on what I see, I think so, right? So yeah, these are kind of my thoughts.
Yeah, totally. I agree with everything you both have said. I think the first thing I would say is 100% in line with what Ludovic just said. The fact that, and John mentioned it too, the fact that it seems to be a fake problem. I think that's problem number one. Like, you know, I bet you that she could take this entire thing and just find an app that needs this sort of feature, and like that to me would be so much more interesting. That she then worked it into an existing product that needs this feature and how that works, because then she had to think about their branding, their styles, their spacing, but also how it then fits into that. And so it solves a problem for a company that currently exists. I think that already would have fixed a lot of the problems that we're all like talking about. So there's that. The other piece is like, it's just small stuff, right? It's small stuff that adds up over time. Like the overall margins like change randomly, and the layout changes, and it makes it hard to see certain things. It's hard to scan certain things. Like some of the text is like a little bit confusing depending on when you read it. It focuses on the what and not the why. There's a lot of that stuff. And then there's like some visual design choices later on where it's like, why did you do that? I'm really curious as to why, like, but I completely agree with you, John, as far as like things that could be totally buttoned up. Like that stuff is the easy stuff at the end of the day to improve on. It's much harder to develop the why reflex and like how you go from an amorphous problem to a concrete solution. And so, yeah, well, with all of that out of the way from all three of us, John, what is your rating on this?
Okay. It's contextual. As a junior designer who's looking for like an entry-level job, I think this is good. It communicated some process. It let me understand at least a little bit of how they work, even if I didn't get like the full picture. If this was someone who had a couple years of industry experience already, I'd say it's a little bit meh. Didn't stand out enough because of the reasons for like explaining the whys behind it. But you know, granted that new people don't always have that context, and you know, coming up boot camps are not necessarily set up. I still think that she's in a good position to be able to quickly add some of that and really hit that solid like good.
Yeah. Totally hear you there. What are
Yeah.
your thoughts?
I think I would give it a I'm between meh and good, but I think that just because of the fact that, you know, she's displaying some quality work, that the portfolio is well thought of, that I checked on mobile, by the way, and it looks great. It's a great mobile experience. I did, and I was like, you know, it's pretty nicely laid out there. It's readable, everything is good, and so I feel like I would say, you know, like for the effort, and I can totally tell that for being a beginner, she puts in a lot of work in there. I'll give it a good. And like you said, John, like if she had like 2 years of experience, I would say like, wow, this is a bit green. But based on where she's at in her career right now, this is good. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. I think I'm with you both on giving her a good, but I'm in between a meh and a good.
Yeah.
And the reason is because I think that like it wouldn't take much for this to become good
Yeah.
or solid if she made some pretty big stylistic choices across the app that made it more consistent and easy to read. And if she changed her case study around to fitting into something else, like an existing problem, versus, and if she could take the work that she already did and apply it to something else like that, I think that would totally help a lot. But yeah, then adding more of the why, stuff like that would really, really help. But yeah, I think overall, Carla, you've done a really solid job. And I think that you can improve it. I think we all think you can improve it. And next time, I highly recommend not including the fact that it was part of a bootcamp project. That's why you did it. Just as a last aside moment, like I think you can just say that you want to tackle this problem and just go into it. That's we're done with that section. So technically, we usually have a total of 3 palette cleansers. Excuse me. So we're going to ask you 2 to back to back because we didn't have a second section for the About page. So, first question. Would you rather work with the world's best product manager and the world's most mediocre developer, or the opposite, the world's most mediocre product manager and the world's best developer?
Oh,
Good luck.
God. Why? That is a terrible choice. Yeah, day to day, at least like where I'm at now, I feel like having a great product manager is super helpful because they're gonna help develop your ideas and thinking and push you in a way that's gonna grow as a designer. And even if you don't ship exactly what you wanted, like you'll be set up to make better choices when you're in this circumstance that you can deliver on what you want, rather than like if you can execute well but you don't have the content to execute to first. I think that it's kind of like cart before the horse. So like work on the fundamentals first, have someone who can like push you and challenge you, help you become a better product thinker and strategist, and use that to make better design choices, because if you have great delivery and you're not making good design choices, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I love that. I think that's a great explanation of that. Okay, last palette cleanser. Tells you where I'm at on a Tuesday. Last palette cleanser. If you were in charge of the UX design for a time machine, what would your top priority be?
Time machine. I think my top priority, well, I mean, I'm gonna have to consider who's using it. Like, what are they using it for? It really depends, right? Is this like a one-way thing? Do people need to be able to get back? Like, there's so many things that I don't think I could like prioritize one. I think it's just like understanding the technical capabilities and audience potentially, because I can't make any decisions or choices before I know that. Otherwise, I'm just throwing spaghetti at a wall.
Great
and
answer.
seeing what sticks. And
You passed the interview. You hired.
I love it, John. Well, are there any projects that you're currently working on, or are there any things that people can go support you on?
I mean, projects, I'm always working on side things, but I think, most importantly is, like people can find me over on ADP List or on LinkedIn. I do free coaching and mentorship sessions if folks want, where I'll go through case studies in depth or talk about general best practices for getting hired, or if anyone just needs a general cheerleader, because the process can be hard. It's a numbers game. It can take a long time, and sometimes just having someone on your side who's rooting for you is the difference to keep going and continue with it. So
It is.
Yeah, and you're the perfect person to have on your side, on I guess, I don't know, their side, whatever the right way to talk about that is. Well, cheers to you, John. Thank you so much for being here with us. So appreciative of your time, and we look forward to having you on at some point.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's fun. Always down to look at portfolios and talk through design case studies.
Thank you so much, John.
I love it.
Cheers.
Cheers.